I'm here with Danillo Lima, one of the authors of the book titled Western Gnosis, and in your chapter on Neoplatonic Theurgy, Danillo, you talk about some theurgic practices of Neoplatonism. Could you tell us a little bit more about how these practices came about and what they consist of?
The same way the ancient mysteries influenced philosophers, they influenced Plato, for example. Philosophers themselves, in turn, also influenced the mysteries. Thus, Plato influenced the mysteries and influenced the initiates of later generations. In this sense, Neoplatonic philosophers, those who continued Plato's legacy during late antiquity, related to such influence both ways. They are influenced by the mysteries, and the mysteries influence them. These mysteries express themselves already in a Platonic language, so to speak. So this made it easier for these schools of philosophy in late antiquity to incorporate initiatory mysterical elements. What did the so-called Neoplatonic Theurgy consist of? More specifically, it was based on a text called Chaldean Oracles, which supposedly was revealed by the gods and by Plato himself, to two Roman soldiers who were also interested in Plato's philosophy. And these texts describe the cosmos, the deities, and the ways through which we can connect with them and invoke them into our mortal world. In this sense, Neoplatonic Theurgy, well, the word theurgy derives from divine action. It is an adaptation of the priestly art of invoking the pneuma, the spirit of a deity, so that it inhabits some ritual object, such as, for example, an image or a statue. More specifically, Neoplatonic theurgists invoked these very deities so that they could inhabit the practitioners themselves, so that in this way they could deliberately generate a process of enthusiasm, which means literally being penetrated by the divine possession. Then it is a way of prompting in union with the gods through a ritual process. Central to this process was the idea that these gods, so in nature, inseminated, and in the soul as well, various signs or symbols of their intelligence, their power, and their presence. The priest or theurgist is the one who learns how to identify such signs and to use them ritually to then be able to connect with this divinity, be it signs which were sown in the natural world, in animals, minerals, vegetables, be it signs which were sown in the rational soul itself, such as, for example, the geometric shapes and numbers, the musical harmonies, be it those signs which are revealed in the form of divine names or mystical voices, which were like mantras, right? They were sets of unintelligible phonemes, which, however, held some magical power. So through these elements, the Neoplatonists created rituals through which they invoked the traditional deities of Orphism, the traditional deities of the Chaldean people, right? They are described in the Chaldean oracles. In this way, they entered into communion with them and acquired superior divine revelations from these gods, which they then passed on within this school as an initiatory transmission.
This whole issue of theurgy is so interesting, and the way you approach the Chaldean oracles. So we can learn a little more. Please tell us what characterizes the Gnostic element within these theurgic practices, the way you see it.
In addition to this process in which the theurgist invokes the divine presence into the material world, there was also the opposite process, one of ascension towards the divine. The theurgists talked a lot about the etheric body, or the astral body, in a more modern language. Using such body, it was possible to ascend towards the sun, through sunlight, in the initiatory rituals of this tradition. And once having purified our subtle body by leaving it in the stars, and in the sun and in the sky, it was then possible to ascend even beyond the cosmos with the rational soul, or with the nous, right? with spiritual intelligence, and then one could behold the light and unite oneself with this light, which is the source of sunlight, and which is the source of all intelligence, of all wisdom, that which is beyond anything human thought can describe. So within this process lies what I understand to fundamentally characterize the Gnostic dimension of this practice. Because Gnosis is nothing more than a path of salvation of the soul, so to speak, through knowledge, a type of superior knowledge, a type of vision, or intuition or intellection, a wisdom which in some way sets us free and liberates us. It elevates, divinifies us. And Neoplatonic philosophers reconciled this with philosophy, understanding that ultimately it is this light and it is this superior liberating knowledge that descends through us and our souls and through all its faculties, revealing itself in the form of inspired knowledge of various kinds, be it revealed or inspired knowledge of the so-called prophets or oracles through our nous, our spiritual intelligence, be it through philosophy, the discursive knowledge of philosophers in our rational soul, and even through sensory forms of revelation, such as those which give rise to prophetic visions and dreams. So in all these forms of knowledge, we are passing through the enthusiasm, the pneuma of the gods, which is penetrating us and revealing a knowledge that allows us to achieve salvation, a liberation from the sorrows of life and everything that accompanies it.
Danilo, thank you very much for your participation. It's a very interesting subject, and we want to know much more about it. So I recommend that anyone interested in all that reads Danilo's article in the book titled Western Gnosis.